Hello everybody, welcome along to this video. This is Mr. Johnson Teaches Poetry Methods, part of my core skills revision set of videos, basically recapping some of the core knowledge that you are going to need as you move through English and up towards your final exams at year 11. This video really focuses on some of the poetry methods that you're very likely to see when unpicking poetry. There is some crossover because you will see some of these methods when analysing language generally, but a very useful video to have your head around. What you'll definitely want to do is be ready to pause the video to make notes. If you just choose to watch this video all the way through without actually writing anything down, you're very likely to forget things. Whereas if you pause it when I'm on each one and make some notes, you're likely to find that those bits of information stick in your head much more than they would if you just watch it all the way through. So without further ado then, I'm going to go for it and go through this video. My first thing I want to say is just about methods. You'll need to name methods whenever you're exploring a text. So if your teacher puts a poem in front of you or a newspaper article or something in front of you, like a speech, be ready to unpick some of the methods and go, oh look, the writer is using sibilance or the writer is using personification. But, as my bullet point number 2 says, never just feature spot or method spot. You don't gain any marks for being able to spot alliteration or spot personification. It's about you saying why the writer has used it. What effect does that method have? And I've given a very brief example of that at the bottom of the slide there. For example, the personification makes the tone more sinister because you feel it is watching you. So what I've done there is I've actually explained what the personification does. I just haven't just said it is personification, why it's there. You haven't got to worry about that too much for this video, but it was just a word of warning really. Your English teacher will be far happier with you if you're able to explain the effect that methods have. So let's go for it then. Be ready to pause this video on each one. I'm going to go through these relatively quickly, but you can always re-watch this if you need to. Starting with alliteration, as it says there, it's the repetition of sounds at the start of a series of words. For example, there I've put I have been beaten, bullied and brutally broken. You can hear that B sound repeating itself there. It's not about when two words have it accidentally. It's got to be deliberate, where it's almost trying to emphasize a sound or draw your ear towards a sound, like it is doing in that sentence. And it doesn't have to be the same letter. I deliberately didn't write the same letter, it's the same sound. So f in fish and f in phone are examples of alliteration. So moving on then to the next one, which is assonance. One that you don't hear so often perhaps is the repetition of vowel sounds inside of words. For example, I've put on the slide there, the moon looks like a blue balloon. Different letter combinations, but it's the same sound. It's that ooh sound that you can hear going on in those ones, and that makes it assonance. Once again, it's an example of a method where it draws your ear and sort of emphasizes what's being said, because when you hear it, you start paying closer attention to it. The moon looks like a blue balloon. It also has like a very soothing effect in that sentence. Caesura is the next one to have a look at. Caesura is the use of punctuation marks to add a break or pause in the middle of a line. So the example I've got there, which I've taken from a GCSE poem, Storm on the Island. The very windows, comma, spits like a tame cat turned savage, full stop. Those first two lines there both have examples of caesura. The pause from the comma and the pause from the full stop are both breaks in the middle of lines, not at the end. The next sentence continues on to give you another example with the full stop on the last line as well. So it's where you've got those breaks inside, and what they do is sometimes like pause you or break your flow deliberately. So it's almost like the poet trying to make you stop and pay more attention to something, and that's caesura. We move on to enjambment, which is, as it says there, a lack of punctuation at the end of a line which causes the line to continue on to the next. Once again, I've taken an example from Storm on the Island. And then you've got blast, you know what I mean. Leaves and branches can raise a tragic chorus in a gale so that you listen to the thing you fear. There's no neat pauses, full stops or commas at the end of those lines. They tumble over into the next ones. Sometimes it creates chaos, sometimes it creates panic, but it certainly sometimes it's done deliberately so the writer isn't using punctuation. They're trying to break rules. Either way, that's what enjambment is, where you don't see pauses at the ends of lines. Imagery is a really, really important method for you to know. Imagery appears so frequently in poems and all sorts of texts that it's a really easy method for you to be able to spot, and if you're panicking and can't find anything else, you're almost certainly going to find imagery, definitely in poetry and often in other texts. I've put it there. It's language chosen deliberately to create a strong or vivid picture. So, for example, ignoring the ones I've got down at the bottom there, I can't just go, outside the window is a car park. That is not imagery. However, I said, outside the window, beneath the blazing sun, lined up in ordered little rows, was a car park, or cars in a car park. That is imagery, because I'm deliberately trying to paint a picture, a strong or vivid picture in your mind. There are different types of imagery. I've just put a few examples there. So you don't just go, the writer has used imagery, it's the writer has used dark imagery, imagery of death, positive imagery, warm imagery, imagery linked to war zones. Notice how I phrase it slightly differently there, but those are a few examples of imagery. There's all sorts. A really, really important method for you to know. Juxtaposition is a good one as well. Two opposites placed together to show their difference. So if I put something really big and really small together, you notice how big and small they are because they're next to something very different. It can be very different ideas as well, but juxtaposition you'll find a lot when you're doing English. Metaphor, a really important one that you've definitely learned since primary school, where one thing is described as another, which makes a comparison. For example, if I said the sky is a sea of diamonds, I'm deliberately comparing the sky to diamonds. I've also got the idea of it being a sea of diamonds. What I'm making it do is I'm making the sky sound really precious because I'm comparing it to diamonds. If I was to say, the sky is a fire or a blazing fire, that has a very different effect. So metaphor is where you say one thing is another and you're doing that comparison for some reason. An extended metaphor then is when you sort of continue a metaphor multiple times across a poem. It almost gives it a bit of a theme, so you sort of see the same ideas happening more than once. My examples there, imagine they were all different lines throughout a long poem. I had the sky as a sea of diamonds. I then go on to talk about the twinkling ceiling, precious jewels. I've got this extended metaphor of something being very precious and like very almost expensive in that sort of sense, or important. So an extended metaphor where you hear something multiple times. Onomatopoeia, not an easy one to spell, but you won't be given lost marks for that. Words which imitate the sounds they are describing, like zip, boom, whoosh, and hiss, all are trying to sound like the noise that they're writing about. So yeah, words which imitate the sounds they are describing. Oxymoron, different to juxtaposition because this is where you place two opposites directly together and it creates some sort of contradiction, something which doesn't really work together. For example, if you talked about a brilliant war, how can war be brilliant? That is an oxymoron, as is, which is taken from Storm on the Island again, the line exploding comfortably. How can something explode comfortably? Those two words don't sit together, so they're an oxymoron. It's when it's done deliberately. Personification, giving a non-human object human qualities, as I've said there. For example, two examples in this one. The door screamed on its hinges as the wind battered the house. Doors aren't alive and can't scream. Wind isn't alive, it can't batter something. But we use that to almost create an effect, making something come alive, which isn't actually alive. So personification, to personify something. The opposite of that is when you make a human sound like an object, is objectification, which is the opposite of personification. Plosives are hard consonant sounds, and I've put a few there. So the T in take, P in power, the G in grabbed, K in kicked, D in disgusting, and B in battered. Those are hard sounds. They're almost very strong and they often can create quite an angry effect when used deliberately. You're going to see plosives in everyday writing, but it's when they're used deliberately that you can label it as a plosive. Repetition, deliberately using the same image or word or phrase or idea more than once. For example, if I talked about the sky of diamonds, the sky of beauty and wonder, I'm repeating the word sky there to sort of almost focus our attention on it. So as I say, repetition is where you're deliberately using something more than once. Look at the spelling of it as well. A lot of students get this one wrong. They miss out the extra IT in there, or TI. I should say. So you've got repeat, because it comes from the word repeat, which a lot of students forget when they're spelling it. So you lose the A from repeat, but add in the ITION on the end of it. Just watch your spelling of it. I get that one a lot as a teacher. Sibilance, which itself is a sibilant word. The repetition of soft sounds in a number of words, like S and sh and z. So my example beneath there, the soft setting sun slid beneath the sea's waves. They don't have to be directly together. There's a bit of a gap between slid and sea's waves, but you can hear that S sound deliberately coming through in that word. A simile, comparing two things using like or as are the key words there. So 3 examples for you. He was ready to explode like a volcano. She left the room as though she were being chased by wolves. And they were as fast as a speeding bullet. All of those give, when you're writing or reading, you can picture what something is like because it's making that comparison for you. So that's what's different about a metaphor. It's saying it's similar to when it uses like or as. What I'm going to ask you to do now is actually test yourself. Pause this slide and have a go at numbers 1 to 10. They're all questions about things you've just heard. And then what we can do is when you unpause this in a few seconds' time, I will go through the answers or reveal all the answers and you can see whether you're right. So it's checking how much attention you've paid. It's like a little pit stop check. So have pen and paper ready. I'm going to ask you to pause this video now and I'll go quiet for a few seconds before I then reveal the slides with the answers. So I'm going quiet now. Okay, and you should have paused and had a go at those, numbers 1 to 10. So check your own answers, they're all going to appear at once. There they are, the answers to the questions. Hopefully you got a full set of 10 of 10. If not, you can always go back and re-watch one of these. And you can also do some Google searching yourself. Don't get too hung up on the idea of having to know everything and every method. You don't have to, and you are given credit if you can describe what a method is without using its name. But a useful way of being able to be really precise when analysing what a writer is doing is using these methods. Thanks for watching this video all the way through. I hope you found it useful. Check out the other videos on my channel which have all sorts of different topics and themes which hopefully help you with your English. And thanks very much for watching, everybody. And for now, it's goodbye from me.